right, I'm Rachel Woody, and I'm here with Ronni Lacroute, co-founder of WillaKenzie Estate, and it is June 10th. And Ronni, we're here to talk about vineyard workers, specifically the Latino and Latina contribution to the wine industry. Before we get into that, though, since this is our first time together, would you tell me a little bit about WillaKenzie Estate and what got you into wine?
Okay, well, WillaKenzie Estate started out more or less as a retirement project. And Bernard, my ex-husband, and I came to Oregon on vacation in 1990, did a little wine tasting, and were just taken with the beautiful land and the opportunities here to buy land and plant a vineyard. So we, within a month actually, came back and purchased a 420-acre property in Yamhill, fairly far from other vineyards, and started ordering grapevines. And a year later, we had 20 acres in the ground. And today, we have over 100 acres in the ground on the estate. We're wine collectors. We hadn't grown grapes before, but it just sucked us in completely, and we became totally engaged in the process and spent a lot of time studying grape growing, learning the best clones to plant. Planted 6 different varietals in the Pinot family, and found that our land, in fact, was a magical place to do that. Key to this whole enterprise was eventually having our own crew. So the first 3 or 4 years, we used a service that came and established everything, but once we had everything up and running, we needed permanent workers every day, and we developed our own crew fairly early on in the game. So 98, we started recruiting people, and we decided they would be on the same basis as the winery workers, working 12 months of the year, having full benefits, and being totally committed to WillaKenzie full-time.
And that's a pretty novel approach, am I correct?
Well, at that time, I don't think anyone in this industry was operating that way. People were using migrant labor. The problem was you didn't know who you were going to get or when you were going to get them. And we wanted to be sure that our workers were as committed as we were to our project, and that everyone was taken care of and was treated very humanely. If you use migrant labor and they come in with a contractor, you have no control over how they're treated. And I found that pretty heartbreaking, actually, when I saw some of the conditions people had to endure.
With taking that approach, I believe you found that your crews that you have, they've been here 3 decades, is that correct?
They've been here, a lot of them, for, 2 decades, about. I remember when we gave our first 10-year awards and people were crying. I mean, it was very touching because that wasn't happening normally in the industry. And we would give them commemorative cases of wine to bring home. But the wine is theirs. They take full ownership of it because they not only work in the field, they work in the winery. They bottle the wine, they ship the wine to customers, they're totally engaged.
Could you speak to, because you employ them full time all year round, what are the various phases that they end up being involved in?
Well, they're working as needed for the bottling, which we do 4 times a year. They're working maintaining the property beyond the vineyard heavily. So we have 420 acres. We've only planted about 105. All the rest of that land has to be maintained. It's the vineyard people who take an interest in it and take care of it. So the fences, the gardens, all the irrigation, including for the landscaping, it's our vineyard workers who do that for us. So they're fully busy. I can guarantee that there's always work. Yeah.
For the vineyard workers and your crew, when they came to WillaKenzie, what sort of background did they have and what skills did they bring with them?
Well, the people we hired already had extensive vineyard experience. We didn't take people who were fresh to the industry. What we did was hire them out of migrant jobs where they didn't know what tomorrow would bring. And they had highly developed skills. They knew how to prune. We recruited specifically some operators of heavy equipment who were expert on tractor, because here on our big slopes, we needed people who could drive any kind of very advanced tractor and adapt to new ones as we would upgrade ours. As it turns out, we're using mostly crawlers that we import from Italy, little narrow crawlers that are quite sophisticated.
For your crew, I believe they're all from a similar location?
Well, the bulk of the crew is from Salem, actually, and they still live there because that's where they feel they have the best community and the support services, and everyone knows everyone else. But most recently, we've actually brought in a few new people, and they live in McMinnville, so we have some more local people too. And McMinnville is getting better. It used to be there were no services for Latinos there, but that's not the case anymore.
What sort of evolution have you seen taking place in McMinnville and Yadkin County in general?
Well, one of the biggest things is that now we have an immigration advocacy center, so if anyone has problems due to their particular immigration status, they have somewhere to go. There was nothing like that before. There are also all kinds of businesses that cater to folks who speak Spanish, which is more comfortable. There's a social life, which again wasn't the case. It's funny, in the early days our guy said, but the Friday night dances in Salem, I mean, there's nothing in Yamhill County like that. We all go to the Friday night dances. So, and baile, very important. I think that there's much more social opportunity in McMinnville now. And Newburgh also, which wasn't always the case.
Do you have some favorite stories that you'd like to share with us about your vineyard workers, seeing them come into their own at WillaKenzie?
Yeah. Well, when they first came, they were very timid. They didn't have much education. They were uncomfortable just filling out simple forms or talking about insurance or talking about investments. And we made sure that they got some education, not only in the area of grape growing, but also all of the various aspects of how to be an adult and how to live in the community. We brought in folks who do workshops for them. We brought investment advisors who train them, and insurance people who train them. And these guys now, they all have their own 401ks and are managing investment accounts. It's amazing to see. And you know, the first sign was that they'd upgraded all of their automobiles. So everyone was driving a much fancier car than I've ever driven. And that told me, okay, they've really come into their own. They feel secure. They're investing in, you know, some fine things for themselves. And it was a good sign. Some of them own their own homes. They're becoming far more sophisticated. So I go to them for advice now. No, seriously.
I believe it. For some of your vineyard workers, I know that you've seen them or helped them even get the pathway to citizenship completed successfully.
Yeah, we did have several that went through that process. Absolutely. Of course, it depends on so many different conditions, so not everybody has an easy time of it, you know, and is eligible right away. Some people are going to have to wait a while. But we're assisting them with that. And I'm working with the Lutheran Community Services Immigration Counseling folks to, you know, help people.
Mm-hmm. Seeing how much has changed, especially for your crew, how they've evolved and come into their own, where do you think the area and the Latino community in vineyard work will go?
Well, I am hopeful that they will go through the same transition that other populations that came to this country for economic opportunity have enjoyed. I see them much more comfortable with their families, feeling like they belong in society, being more accepted, going out for dinner and a movie like everybody else, just being amongst us as equals. And it wasn't like that in the early days. Frankly, there was a lot of fear, but I think they're much more relaxed now because they're more accepted, and I certainly am appreciative of that because I don't have to be fearful either, you know. I like seeing them enjoying life.
For the wine industry at large in Oregon, are there differences with how the Latino community is treated with the rest of agriculture?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I take a look at construction industry, hospitality industry, including restaurants, and the nursery industry. And I don't think those industries have provided as formal means of support as the vineyard and winery industry has done. I mean, for instance, with Salud, we've provided a very formal organization that's doing wellness clinics, dental clinics, and very extensive case management of all medical needs for our vineyard workers. And we've got thousands of people involved in this program. Now, over the years, I don't know how many thousands have enjoyed having access to services through this. We've actually talked to the other industries and asked them to join us, and so far that hasn't taken place. So it's just the wineries and vineyards that are doing this.
Do you see that becoming bigger or evolving more, or do you think the way Salud is working now, that would be the model?
Well, just having come out of the Salud meeting, the demand is greater, definitely. It always increases. We're hoping to be able to grow it and provide more and better service. We're looking at new ways of fundraising in order to do that, because it all takes money, and that's been the limitation. It's not the desire to do it, it's simply funding.
And right now, where is the funding coming from?
Well, for the most part, let's see. We have events that we're getting most of the funding from. Events and then a few direct contributions. So we have the big auction in November that takes place in a 2-day format, an electronic auction, and then an oral auction on a separate day with a dinner. And then there are a number of events, including now some of the wineries are stepping up, and I know there's going to be a big concert at Penner Ash, for instance, that's going to raise money. So we're going to see more entertainment-based fundraisers spread out, not just auctions. So anybody who wants to step forth and come up with a new event, we're looking for it.
And for the Salud program, are you on the board, or what is your involvement?
No, I'm actually on a subcommittee of the steering committee that's called the Service Subcommittee, and we work directly with the medical personnel to talk about case management, about how we're going to actually work with the clinics and the doctors who provide the services. And then we talk about specific cases and how we can help.
What are some of the benefits or successes you've seen from this program?
People who come in, for instance, who can't work because their teeth are all rotten, and when we fix their teeth, all of their health problems go away, and they go back to work, and they have decades of work ahead of them. Whereas if that had been left untreated, they would have had massive infection, and that would have been the end. So, I mean, there have been numerous cases. Children who've been ill because the families are being treated also, who've been cured. It's just, I've cried over many of these stories, actually. People who don't know where to turn, and then they call the Salud 800 number, and there's somebody who's going to look out for them and tell them how to get help. And although Salud is not an insurance company and it's not a medical treatment facility, we actually direct people and make it possible for them to get the help they need.
And I imagine you've worked with Leda.
I work with Leda a lot.
Many, many times.
Yes.
Could you say a few words about her?
Oh, Leda is how should I say, she's a brilliant registered nurse from Costa Rica who has a deep understanding of our Mexican community working in the vineyards. It's a different culture entirely. She comes from a very, very educated family. She obviously, had a lot of training with her nursing school. But she can talk to someone with basically 3 years of primary education and develop trust and educate that person all about healthcare. And people are calling her all the time, saying, Leda, what do I do? And she has the patience and the interest to work with them on all levels. She also works with government authorities. She works with top healthcare administrators. She can work on any level. She's an amazing, amazing woman. It's an honor to be able to work with her. She is Salud, actually.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah. Actually, when in the early days we had problems of domestic abuse, our workers had never been taught how to have a proper relationship with a family member. And there were cases where There was violence in the home. Leda came in and did a training for our crew, and we haven't had any problems since that. They're now very sensitive to what it's all about, and they conduct themselves much better than they did before.
Right. I know that's one of the things we've been very impressed with researching Salute is it's not just the instance of, okay, here's a Band-Aid, it's got a proactive element.
Very proactive. In fact, that's mostly what it's about. The statistics that I see from later are how many emergency room visits were prevented because of the action that was taken ahead. How many people did not get sick from diabetes because it was caught in time. So it's preventive and proactive, definitely. Yeah. And now everyone's taking care of their teeth too, which is a huge step in a community of people who before never had access to dental care. And they've been educated, and they get their 6-month checkups and cleanings, and they take care of themselves.
Yeah, the whole person.
Exactly.
Well, I know we sort of delved into Salute, so I stole some of your questions, but do you have follow-up questions, Julian or Lydia?
What did you see towards the beginning of like the startup of Salute? Was there general how was it received, I guess?
Well, we jumped into Salute when it was ongoing because we weren't the first wave of, wineries. But in our 3rd year, we were invited to join in. And it was already very, very well accepted from the beginning. It was a very exciting program to the community. So I never saw any problems with that starting in the wine community, especially the great enthusiasm for it. The problem has been getting vineyards that don't have wineries directly involved. It's their workers, but they have been a little more reluctant to contribute. So we're now inviting the vineyards to be as heavily involved as the wineries.
When Rachel asked you about where your workers come from, is there a point of origin, like in Mexico generally, that they also come from? Like a lot of,
Yeah.
like I know, Jason Irie, a lot of his guys are from one place. Are there specific places?
Mine are a little more spread out, but I would say the biggest city nearby, many of them, is Guadalajara.
Mm-hmm.
It's more that region, but it's not only that. I've had folks from many other places. And there are ethnic mixes now. Not everybody is, of the same ethnic background. We're getting more people with some indigenous mix in there. I don't have any purely indigenous folks, but some of them are, obviously of both backgrounds. So it's getting more interesting. I had one guy who looked different from everyone. I asked him where he was from, and he was from Los Mochis. He was the only one from there. So
We've also seen a lot of that migration coming further from the south, so they're
more and more. The new people,
Chiapas and Oaxaca and
Right.
even in Central America.
You're going to see them in the migrant cruise heavily. There are a few days of the year during harvest when we need to have crews come in from the outside to help pick the grapes with our guys. So our guys work as foremen and train them and bring them through the rows. I'm seeing very different ethnic mixes coming in now. Yeah, definitely. And a lot more women, a lot more than in the beginning.
So could you talk about that? I know you've had a good longevity for your crew, because you've paid well. I know of a couple of places where they're also, like Dick Erath's foreman now has a vineyard, and is do you see sort of this, like even internally, do you have a system for moving people up the hierarchy where you can give them more responsibilities?
Well, there's been change, and the way it's worked here, we really aren't big enough to put them in a higher position beyond the foreman. So a former foreman went out and started his own business, for instance, and he's now running a vineyard service company. Okay. And so people who were below him moved up to the next level into more of the assistant vineyard management position here. And it's evolving that way. So I think eventually people will just move beyond and have more responsibility on their own. Yeah, because we're pretty small, actually, if you compare us to like Iran. Yeah.
When I was here, I think I was picking up a couple of barrels for one of our exhibits. I
Right.
talked with one of your assistant winemakers,
Yes.
and she told me this story of an Anglo guy who insisted on working on the team.
Yes.
And she said it took him something like 2 years to beat the slowest guy up the... Could you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. Over the years, we've tried to incorporate Anglos into vineyard work. We thought it was a healthy thing to do. They've never kept the pace. Usually they quit between 2 and 4 weeks out just because they're too exhausted. It's like, well, don't you give me an hour off in the middle of the day? And that doesn't work. We don't. We give them 20-minute breaks. So we did have this one guy who was all gung-ho. And he was sure he could do the same work. And he's still not quite there. It's funny, but I don't know what it is about the Anglo guys. Physically, they're not as coordinated on the pruning. You watch the pruning from our Hispanic crew, and they're just, they've got their snips. They're right there with it. The Anglos go, let's see, it goes like that. And they're analyzing, they're in their head. And I think that might be what's holding them back. Same at harvest. They're totally in their head. Should I take this cluster or that cluster? Let's see. That one, 20 ripe berries, that one, 15. I'll take that one. Meanwhile, the Hispanic guy has filled his bucket.
She said she was helping this guy actually try and do yoga so he could even move.
Oh, yeah. His body wasn't used to so much movement.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. No, I know who that is. We've had many folks try out there. And then we have the visitors, the tasters who think that, come and pick for a day. I said, just take a look at it. And they look, oh, I couldn't do that. And that's the end of that. It's not about romance. It's about getting the job done. And it's all slope, too. That's the other piece of it. They're just thinking of strolling. You can't stroll when it's a 40% grade. They slide right down the hill. Any other questions?
That's it.
What would be your final thoughts on this piece, or where do you hope to see us go with this for the research?
I think at this point it's really asking the vineyard workers from the inside what they've seen and the changes for them over the decades. I'd be very interested in their point of view. And also, what does it take to make them happy at work? What are the things they enjoy from their employers? Because, they're very shy. They're not going to ask for anything ever. They never do. So if you can find out, let me know. They're just so appreciative. All they say is thank you, thank you, thank you, all the time. Wonderfully appreciative.